not scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Cinderella's story out of nowhere.
It's in the home! That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself!
Guys, I hope your seatbelts are on, because I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Josh McCallan on this Capital Hacking Show. And here's why. Josh interviewed me a little less than a year ago when I hopped on as the co-host, and you got to hear my story, my background, who I am, and just we've connected that way. But I don't think a lot of you have actually heard Josh's story and connected with him on that deeper level. So, Mr. Josh McCallan, give us some background on who you are and what makes you you.
So, John, you had this idea to do a show where we get to feature our story. And honestly, I hadn't thought about that. What a great gift you gave to me, John, by even thinking about doing this. So, I'd love for you to pepper me with questions, but I could start with some basics if you want.
I will pepper you. Definitely, I'm going to pepper you.
Basics, right? Start with the basics.
I would like to know a little bit about who you are, right? A little, where'd you grow up?
Sure.
What type of family did you grow up in? We all know you're married with 10 beautiful, amazing kids, but we want to learn a little bit more about you, Josh.
Sure. So, thank you again, John. So my family and we all grew up in Norristown, Pennsylvania. So outside of Conshohocken, we just had Gary Jonas on the show the other day, and he did an empire. He built his empire not far from where I grew up, in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Now I live in Delaware County, Delco, Springfield. I grew up in a situation, poor family. My poor mom and dad got divorced young. So I was the oldest kid. There was one brother and myself. I was 5, and he was probably 2 when they got divorced. And we grew up, my poor mom was about to be a nurse. Okay. She's in her 20s. We thought we'd live a middle-class life. She thought so too. My dad at the time was in photographic commercial photography. And at the time, this looked like a great career. This is when you did artwork with cameras that today is done with Photoshop, right? But in the old days was actual cameras. Turns out that career came to an end relatively early, and he struggled for a while. So that's why we didn't have much cash from him. And then my mom, who could have been a nurse, gets struck with out of the blue, a cerebral hemorrhage at the age of 27.
Whoa.
Which we call a stroke, but I think it's technically different. And left the poor girl in a coma for 5 days. My dad was a normal, young, maybe immature guy, so we ended up getting dropped off at other people's houses. This is after their divorce. And I ended up living with my mom's friends for a few months while she's in a coma, and her family takes care of her. And she comes out of a coma 5 days later and was never the same. Poor girl. She never walked naturally again. She walks kind of with a cane ever since 27. Drives very limited, and never worked again. So all of a sudden, we're basically trying to live on one little, what do you call those things? Money from your father when they're divorced. What's that called? Alimony, not child support. Yeah, child support. It didn't work out so well. So my mom got us on welfare for a while to help make ends meet. And that's how I remember growing up. We had a relatively nice, safe environment. We weren't in a dangerous part of town. But we lived, like cash to cash. Loved working. So as soon as I could get little scraps of money, I always did. Paperboy was my first gig.
I love it. I remember Paperboys. A lot of people listening may not remember that, but yep.
No, and when I get to give a little speech, I always tell this one funny thing about Paperboys. You probably don't even realize this if you weren't a Paperboy, but you didn't get a paycheck. It's true entrepreneurialism. Just a little diversion. You actually get papers on consignment. They show up at your door. You do all this work at 6 a.m. as a little kid, and then you have to go get the money from the families and collect the money and then buy the papers in retrospect, like you owe the crazy. Wow. So no paycheck. It's like you go and charge the lady $5 for the week and give them 3 of those $5 for the papers and keep the 2. Isn't that crazy? That's how it works. Anyway, did that for years. Loved it. Then real quick from there, I kind of grew in love for hard work, and I just always saw such value in it, joy. Um, Never was really a grumpy kid, always kind of happy to just make my way in this world. So from there, grew up, ended up wanting to be in business. Um, had some good mentors. I was a what do you call it? Pizza man. I became a pizza man after being a dishwasher. Then I became a pizza man. Then I became a busboy, valet. Worked my way up through hospitality because, of course, that's the fastest, best way to make money in high school and college. And then I got my college degree in theology, in history, economics, and high school teaching. So that's what I
Wow.
did. I was actually a high school teacher. You might not have known that. In
How
the
many
90s.
degrees did you have, Josh?
Three degrees, believe it or not.
Wow. And they were all majors, not minors at all?
All
Three
majors. Yeah, because back then you had to do they thought they thought my advisors told me to get a degree in teaching too, right? So I wanted to have history and I wanted theology, but you had to also get this education degree. So it was basically, I don't know, like 170 credits to graduate with all those degrees. So way more than you needed to just get a bachelor's. But from that, taught and realized I was a terrible teacher in high school because I thought teaching was like this motivational speaking thing. And at the time I was all about giving people like purpose in their life. Like, let's do this. Let's get better at life. Kind of like a coach. And that's not exactly how high school kids like to be taught. They typically would rather you just punch a clock and go home. So I found no joy in this. I feel terrible to tell you guys. I was a pretty bad failure as a teacher because I was like supercharging these lessons. It was landing on deaf ears. Man, I'm going into the deep stuff here, bro. I haven't talked about this in like 10, 15 years. So it was from that point that I pivoted, and Melanie and I are now married. We're like 22, super young married people. I meet her in college. That's a different story. She's a grade school teacher. I'm a high school teacher. And at that point, I came up with this capital hack, right? And this is where this concept always comes from. I'm like, what if we could go back to get an MBA, switch focus, let's get back into business, which was my growing up, my love. I gave it up to teach, but not pay for anything. So here's how we did it. And everybody can do this if you're 22. You go to a school where you want to get your MBA from, and you start working in one of their easy to hire jobs like admissions recruiting, which is sales. It's college sales. So I got a job there, free MBA, traveled the world on their dime, recruiting people from all over, and got a free MBA. And that's kind of how I just pivoted out of education.
It's a great capital hack right there, bro.
Yeah. Don't pay for it.
No, I love it. I love it. And, real quick, and we're going to keep moving forward with Josh in his life. But a few things that I've picked up on, you being young, the struggle, the feeling, and I've been there too, where you can't afford certain things and your friends can, and you see other people being able to. And I grew up with secondhand clothes. There was a store in Philly called the House of Bargains, and we used to go in there. It was like, I think they call them consignment shops now, whatever. So that really motivated you to start making money on your own. And as a paper boy, that also taught you how to speak to adults, which is amazing, right?
Oh, that's a good point. That is true. I never put that.
Sales skills and getting in front of people. And, it seems natural, the progression, pizza boy, waiter, all that, but then becoming a history teacher and being a motivator. I had an English teacher, Mr. Dwyer, who would put a motivational quote, a different one every single day. And it was long on the chalkboard every single day. And he would read it off, and he would give us all pencils. We're in 10th grade. He'd give us 11th grade. He'd give us pencils. Says you are a winner. That's what these pencils said.
Nice.
Yeah, loved it. But we all made fun of him for it. And every single day I would leave the class and erase one of the letters because my then girlfriend, now wife, would be in that class after me. So every day he would read the quote, and he would be missing a letter, and he'd pick up on his English class.
See, so she's flirting, right?
Yep, and that was like my hello to her every day, and he never caught me, but he was an awesome motivator, and I'm sure you were too, and that really makes you who you are today. You are a great teacher, and you are a great motivator, and you are a great support man. for your staff, and I've seen it firsthand many times, which is awesome. So,
Yeah.
so then you go on, you get a free MBA. You're married.
Yep.
Melanie is an elementary school teacher, which,
Yep.
by the way, Christine has a master's degree in elementary ed from St. Joe's. So our wives.
That's why we like.
I guess they have to be elementary school teachers to deal with us.
They
Josh.
do. They do. I love it. I love it. And my wife ended up having those 10 children. So she always says, see, I told you, I knew I needed that. But there's a cool another quick element here that colors in a lot of why you now know me as this guy who loves land development and architecture. When we were 25, lots of cool things had happened in that recruiting and getting that college secondary degree, that MBA. But one of the coolest parts was we fell into an opportunity to run a European campus in the Alps for a university. And that was a great pivot. So Melanie and I only had one little baby. By the way, that's also right before we moved to Europe is when we bought our first house hack. See, all these hacks. We didn't call it that back then. It was called buying a duplex. And I talked Melanie into it, even though she's like, come on. These houses are cheap. It was a poor little college town. She's like, we don't have to buy a duplex. We could buy a regular house. I'm like, no, we'll live for free forever. Yes. So we kind of did. We bought that house hack. It was great. We kept it for like 10 years.
Let me pause you for 1 second. Did you go FHA?
Yeah. Back then we did. It was like pennies.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize this, and we've talked about it before, but if you're new to the show and you're young, you don't have to be young, by the way, if you're just looking at house hack. You can go FHA, which is only 3% down, and buy up to 4 units. You could buy a quad with FHA financing. So, quick tidbit. That was very smart of you, Josh.
Yep. Stumbled into all those cool things. I must have read a book. I don't even remember which book it would have been. It was before Rich Dad Poor Dad. This was the 90s. But jumping from that, we lived in 4 years in Europe, and it fundamentally changed Melanie and I. And there is why when you come to visit one of our resorts today, which you and I love, there's a lot of differences in the way we do hospitality. And one of them, we talk all about this culture, Viva May now. Viva May's French for revive the soul. Melanie and I worked on developing that over the last half a dozen years now. But it comes from an expression we learned living in Europe. And this is actually something I never share with people. Now, for those of you who are listening to this show going, when are we going to get to money making? We'll get to money making for you and your families later. Do not worry. But this is a word. I'm going to teach you guys a German, Austrian folk language, kind of Germanic word that means something very special. It's called Gemütlichkeit. So if anybody's visited Europe.
Gemütlichkeit. Is that right?
I'm going to do it like 3 times because I'm going to try my best to sound German speaking again. Gemütlichkeit. Gemütlichkeit. And it's probably a long German spelling, and each fraction probably has a meaning, but ultimately the meaning is a warm hospitality, very warm. And it's the type of hospitality that Eastern Europeans, that is second nature to them. You know what? The best way to understand it would be Southern hospitality in America, where like people treat you nice, but you almost feel like they're trying to treat you like a relative, or they're trying to welcome you into their home. So now, if you're listening to the show and you're part of our staff at Viva May, and you've heard all the expressions, like our greeting at the door is not hello, it's welcome home. And we talk about the virtues of hospitality, of joy, humility, and ministry. All these things kind of we experienced for 4 years living in that village setting in Europe. And when we would travel, there's this other cool thing. So we lived, picture Sound and Music, Maria von Trapp. That's kind of where we lived. And we're running this American kind of campus. We're speaking German in the town when we go to grocery stores and restaurants. Okay skill development of the language skill, but not great. But my daughter got to go to true kindergarten, as they say it over there. And by the way, this is where Arnold was from. So everybody sounded like Arnold over there. So but one time, John, we got a chance because some of the people we worked with were from other countries. They weren't all Austrians. So we had a very melting pot type of environment. One guy invited us, he and his wife invited us to visit his parents in the former Soviet bloc. Now, this is, 20 years ago. So the Soviet Union came down, the walls came down like 93 or something like that. It wasn't that long ago when USSR came apart.
Yeah.
So back then, 20 years ago, that was still relatively recent. So when we would go to Eastern Europe, which means cross out of Austria, go to the east towards Russia, you start coming across Slovakia. And so he brought us to Slovakia. I just want to tell you this one more thing, and then I'll get off hospitality for a minute. This is where it profoundly impacted Melanie and I, and this is why we do what we do today. We stay at his parents' house. They're both medical doctors, husband and wife, medical doctors, former Soviet Union, Slovakia, and they live in a second floor, what you and I would call a condo, in a tiny little town with no lot and 2 bedrooms. But we're now all in this house, and they want to feed us. Like, they won't sit down. The 2 doctors will not sit down with us at the table. They only want to serve us. We're like standing up. They're like, no, you sit. Okay, we will sit. Then they're like, we want you to stay here. And so then they made a room for us. It was their room. They cleaned up their room and left to go sleep on the sofas so that we could have a room. And then they wanted to show us their garden, which was all fruit bearing, like every inch. Because again, Soviet Union, you want to make your own food. You want to do stuff yourself. So you walk out in this yard that's like 10 feet by 15 feet by another 10 feet by 15 feet all around it. And it was tree after tree of pears or peaches or something. And they're eating everything like every bit of land is meant for food. Amazing. And everything we eat in their kitchen was like a preserve that they made. I was like over the top changed. And I just remember thinking they touched my soul by doing that. It was just so loving.
Wow.
Now you understand parts of why Viva May is meant to be this hospitality brand that gives that feeling to more people, because it was over the top. So fast forward, I get back to America 4 years later. The big financial boom had happened, and everybody's talking about how they made $100,000 on their house. It's 2006. The crash had not yet happened. And I say, Melanie, honey, she's like, what are we going to do next? I'm like, I don't think we should be in universities anymore. That's not what our calling is. I said, we're going to get into land development. And she's like, well, come on, man. What you talking about, Willis? And I'm like, no, honey, we're doing it. We're doing it. So we got into lending. I became a mortgage broker. And I said, my quest was to meet developers. There's 100 hours of cool stories there for another show. But the person after person I meet, and some of them, John, by accident, we now know each other's people. But back then, it was just one person introduced me to another person. They're like, you know what? You should meet this other developer, because I had come up with strategies to sell spec condos and townhouses just by common sense. And it was very cool. And so one developer after another is like, you got to meet this young guy. He's scrappy. He's interesting. Let's go. So finally, I meet a gentleman. This is like the 8th dude we're meeting, who ends up saying, I love your ideas, and I would love to have you be a partner in one of our ideas. Like, he was going to buy my idea, which was the paper idea. And he's like, I'll give you a small salary, and if it works, you make some money. If not, you go on your way. He ends up putting me in his family office, and that's when my life kind of switched. And so now I'm working for this great guy. He's taking a flyer on me, and we're going to do some interesting sales strategy business. Don't worry about that. I'll tell you about that some other time. In the meantime, he's like, but guess what, Josh? I just had a liquidity event. You know, he didn't use these expressions, but this is what happened. And I built a family office, and my favorite thing to buy is real estate on the beach. We're going to buy every single thing we can on the beach in New Jersey. And I'm going to tear down old buildings and build $5 to $10 million beach houses. And I'm like, my mind was blown, right? Because Melanie and I are super frugal. I had no cash to my name. I did that time. I was actually so frugal. We had 6 figures in savings from just being frugal. So here he is. He goes, I need project managers because I just bought 6 of them. The clock is ticking, and I don't have enough builders. Nobody's showing up at my properties. Get down to New Jersey and help me build these houses. So it took like a few weeks for him to say it that clearly. But by 4 weeks later, I'm sitting in a building using the plans and telling contractors what to do in the building. And I'm like, I'm doing it. We're land developing here.
Yeah.
So I ended up building some famous New Jersey properties that you would know if you're from this area in Ocean City on the boardwalk. People use one of the buildings I built with him as a landmark. Anyway, all of a sudden, because of the boom time, nobody would show up. Like no true GCs would show up. It allowed me to develop skills
Yeah.
rapidly that no one would have let me build. But I was building because there was nobody else showing up, and I cared about the guy who owned it. So anyway, fast forward, we did about $55 million worth of houses,
It's great.
special stuff, and then the crash happened. And I've gone deep on that, but the crash changed a lot of things. I ended up leaving his family office on great terms, his brothers and father, son figure, and I buy a franchise. And this is the part that I think a lot of our investors today appreciate, and I want them to appreciate, is we lost the business. Melanie and I had put, I think we were down to because now we have 6 kids. We have $50K in savings. We buy a franchise with $50K. And
Wow.
it's a cleaning company for restaurants. And back in the recession, as those of us who lived through it, there was you were afraid of doing business unless you felt it had to happen. Like recession resistant was a key expression. So
Yeah.
I thought and this is how I met Larry at Cuba Libre.
Yeah, Larry Cohen, sure.
Larry Cohen I thought if I could clean restaurants with the fire inspector code, meaning the fire systems of restaurants have to be legally cleaned by a certified person or else they can't be open. So as long as you have a restaurant that's open, you need somebody like me that was my theory. So I bought a franchise and I had to literally clean kitchens. And there's pictures. I got to find them, man. I was like, dude, it was wearing me out. I was working at night, 100+ degree, you're sticking your body up inside the hood. If you've ever been in a commercial kitchen and you're spraying steam and you're wearing a jumpsuit. I used to have great jumpsuits. I'm wearing my fancy suit today, but that was a great jumpsuit. It had big logo on the chest. I freaking loved it, but it was killing me.
Yeah. You got 6+ kids now at home. You're working hours when restaurants are closed. So who knows how
middle of the night.
Middle of the night.
Dude, some other time, John, on a secret episode, I'll have to tell you how I used to hire people every day to join me, and they would quit the same day. It was the funniest because it was hellish work. And I was out there with them. Anyway, another day, another story. We lose the business. A year later, we couldn't get the bills covered. Even though we were technologically, this is another key principle. Anybody who's ever wanted to start a business, what you don't necessarily know before you start a business is as you actually start to have a hockey stick going up, which we were doing at that time, we were actually doing more and more restaurants a week. So all of a sudden, the math was going to work. But 8 months before then, the math was not working, meaning more expenses compared to less revenue. Now the revenues are going up, but the problem is I couldn't keep up with the expenses that had backlogged. So there came the day where I either had to give the keys back or get a lawsuit. So I gave the keys back to the franchise because businesses consume cash at the beginning, even if they're growing.
Yeah.
Principle that I've come to realize well through what we do today. This is actually more of an academic podcast. Sorry, everybody. Not that funny, but if you follow what we're teaching you here, this is like fundamental business principles. I did not realize that as you grow a business, you actually consume cash, even though it looks like you're selling more each month. The effort to get there, the gasoline in the jet that takes off, most of it's burned on the takeoff.
Yeah.
In the business. So that's when you start to
Funny
hear
you said that because I was about to say you need capital for the runway. Before you said that about the gas and
that's
the
the problem.
Capital
That's
for
the problem that people don't realize.
Business.
Yeah. So we run out of cash, and there's this day, December 2010. Melanie will remember it. I'll have to have her listen to this. She'll probably yell at me when I'm so honest about everything. There's a day, like I said, 6 kids out of any bank account we now had and done. We literally just cut a deal with the franchisor. They came after us and I said, here, they're like, give us the keys or we come after you. I'm like, here's the keys. And at this point, by the way, the name of that business is Hoodz, Hoodz. It's now the most dominant franchise in the whole center of the businesses because we had Philly and I got all the best brands. But again, it took too long to make the money. Bottom line, she's in bed, very upset with me. And she's just talking truthfully. She's a good person, but she's like, how could you do this to us? You ruined us. We have nothing. And how could you do this? And I just remember the disgust and the hurt. And
Mm.
I was like, Melanie, I'm with you. Everything in me says you're right, and I should never have done that. But I feel like it's the middle of the movie, honey. It's when it's when things don't look right for the people in the movie. It looks really bad. And she remembered rolling back over and whatever that must have hit her because I was really in a peaceful state for how bad we were. So from that point forward, things change.
Wow.
About a year after that, I become a consultant. Man, I'm going too deep. Sorry. I became a marketing consultant, got into all kinds of cool things because at least I could do it with my body and myself. And a year and a half later, that same person I worked for before, we'd stayed really close friends, and he heard I was leaving and moving to DC to run a marketing department and a sales department. And I said, well, I got to go, man. Melanie's held on long enough, and now we have an opportunity. We're going to take it. And he said, why don't you join me as a partner this time, and we'll start a business together. Lots of iterations came up, but the one that stuck was a business called Icona. Now, Icona, a phenomenal business. I was super happy to be a partner and be there and work on all the ideas, the culture, the naming, the vision, and physically building some resorts. And it changed my life. So that's when I found our vocation in life, was to actually combine business with this dynamic type of hospitality.
I love it. What a great story, Josh. And I think for those entrepreneurs out there, we've all been in those tight spots, right? We've been in those moments, and I can remember I started buying real estate investment properties right around 2006, just before the crash, and you could buy it while I was doing the Burr method before it was called a Burr method, but I was buying it cash. I took a HELOC on my house. I used that money to be buying a property and then fixing it up and doing everything wrong. And then the bank was like so generous to give me more than it was actually worth. And then I would do it again, and then I did it again, and I was holding them. And then the crash happened, and properties aren't worth nearly what they said they were worth. And then you're upside down in these properties, and you can't sell them because I'm like, well, I'm just going to hold, even though I'm not making any money. At some point, the market has to stabilize. But it was there were scary times back then, and I've had conversations with Christine like, I am so sorry that I put us in this financial situation because I was a complete idiot and I thought I was doing things right. And it eventually all worked out. But I think most entrepreneurs can go back to different points in their life where they were like, oh my God, I just literally gambled my house.
Yeah. Yeah. John, this is such an honoring thing that you did this for me, where you let me share. I honestly don't talk about most of those components to our story much. I don't want to overdo it today because I know you and I have a tight wall here on our time, but there's a whole nother chapter, and I could do a little summary of it now, or we could do a different show on what's going on in the future.
The direction I'd like to take this, and thanks for giving me the keys here today, is I want to pivot a little bit, but I think it was important. And by the way, if you're listening to this show, like, none of this was planned today. I literally called Josh 3 hours ago in the middle of a workout. He was talking to me, asked me a question. I'm like, hold on, I got 4 more sit-ups to finish before I can answer that question. Like, he'll tell, I was legit right in the middle of it. And I go, Josh, listen, I have an idea, and I think it's a good idea. Let's reintroduce you to our listeners. And a lot of our listeners invest with Accountable Equity and your properties, and it's exciting. And I want to make sure that they know who you are, the man you are, and the integrity that you have. So at that point, we got this scheduled, and Josh, you were so transparent, and I hope our listeners now really know you deeply. But let's pivot into Accountable Equity and explain what all the exciting things that are going on there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I thankfully I get to be on other people's shows a lot and talk about Accountable Equity. We don't talk about so much on here, but Melanie and I, when we found a project. So I'm no longer, at one point I was no longer with my old partner, and we had a small liquidity event, but not enough to really build a business. And so we dove deep into learning both the structure of capital, which I had been around tremendous capital structures for a while, but I didn't have to be the capital raising person. And we said we have a deep expertise in resort turnaround, which is all I've ever done. I've only ever bought distressed real estate, and it's only ever been very hard distressed real estate. So I say that builds your muscles up. You know what I mean? It's like you with those 4 extra sit-ups. I mean, if you do the hard thing, if you do the hard thing first, someday there'll be easy things. We'll just punch a clock and they'll work. But for right now, I'd rather continue to deep dive in our expertise. Bottom line, we built Accountable Equity as a small private equity group that invites families, and we typically allow people, just good people. It's not institutional people. It's families, $50,000, $100,000. Some people are $500,000, but over 360 of us now have created this community where we've put our money up. Each of us invest, not everybody every time, but all of us once at least. And we buy real estate projects. And then we get our other portion of our life is running that hospitality portion where we know how to run them and make money with buildings. So we have the investors who own the real estate and own all the profits. And then you have the operators who know how to do the work. And so we call that human capital at Viva May and financial capital at Accountable Equity. And that's part of where this show came from is it's not meant to be shortcuts. Capital hacking is the idea that it takes both, creative ingenuity to make capital appreciation happen. And then it takes financial reserves and resources, power. That's what capital can be defined as. You come together and now you see this engine working, a flywheel. People like Tom Collins call it a flywheel, where the people need real estate so they can get passive losses. I'm going into some really complicated things, folks.
This is good.
If you want to find out more, just hit us up at accountableequity.com, because what I'm about to tease you with is the ultimate reason the flywheel's moving so well. And thankfully we chose asset classes and assets. Like, we're not going through the struggles multifamily is going through right now. I have a lot of my friends are multifamily assets only. And someday they'll come back out of their, right now the struggle is you definitely can't refinance them right now. And that's okay if you had great debt and you just want cash flow. But if you're trying to exit or trying to refinance, that's not going to work right now. Whereas for us, we have rapidly growing cash flow and our values are going up now. And we're somewhat recession resistant because of the type of revenue we went after, which was weddings.
Yeah.
So long story short, the families get into this flywheel, the Jennies and the Bobs and the Bills and the Sammys, normal people all over the country. Some have met us in person. Some have heard us through shows like this. They're like, we need real estate assets as part of our portfolio so that we can offset some taxes, hold on to something for a period of time, for a while, make cash every year, and have wealth growing. So it's a kind of a nice, that's what real estate does for you, but it has to be profitable real estate. It can't, that doesn't work necessarily if the real estate's losing value. So in our scenarios, they're growing. And so we take that money that they give us to buy the building, then we put it to work, build the building out, and then they put a team in place, and then the team generates profits, comes back to the investors, and they call that a flywheel. And acquisitions this is a great time for us to grow because property values are down. There is some distress in every market class. And so we are finding incredible deals. And there's going to be another show, John, I'm going to beg you to do, where you can ask me about the actual deals of Accountable Equity.
Yeah. We'll do some deep dives.
Yep. And what's coming now is I feel like we were built for this time in the economy. You know me, I was finding distress even when the economy was kicking butt. Well, now that the economy's not kicking butt, when we find distress, the upside can be even more exponential in our modeling.
It's such a nice investment that you offer to families, and I say families because it is families who literally invest with your company, and and a lot of people still don't, and we've done multiple shows on this, but you can, if you have IRA money, 401k money, you can redirect that money into Josh's fund, accountable equity, and get great returns. And listen, Wall Street is not doing great at the moment, so it's not. You have an opportunity here to pivot your money, and your wealth planners and your financial planners may not like me saying that, but they have limited product, and people don't realize that they can actually, without penalty, redirect their stuff into guys that raise money like you. And then the really cool thing is you can go stay where you're a part owner.
That is amazing, isn't it, John? I don't think people realize it until they join us at one of our events. Like you and I, you just did a great GoBundance event at Renault. Thank you for that quality work. People don't realize how great it is.
85 men flew in for that event. Did you know 85?
Unbelievable. And they get this. Some of them own part of the property, and others are just surprised you can own such cool things. Normally when people invest, it's usually a tired old building that's going to become a rental, which is great. God bless America. We need that. Here, you get to stay here if you want. It's awesome.
And you get treated where the red carpet is rolled out for every single person walking through the door. And as you guys just listened, Josh, when him and his wife were in Austria and they learned this hospitality concept, right? And the Viva May, revive the soul, because when you walk in there, or even if you call, I would say, hey, you know what? Just call Renault just to say hello to somebody, because they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to say, it's a beautiful day at Renault. And I remember I called Josh the day I was coming in, and you remember it was torrential rains that day. That first day we were there on Sunday, it was downpours. And I called, I don't even remember why. And the lady picks up and she says, it's a beautiful day at Renault. And I'm thinking, this is the opposite of a beautiful day right now. It is torrential downpours and I'm driving there. But it is a beautiful day when you walk inside those doors, because your staff you can make the weather. As a matter of fact, that's U2 is where I got that expression. 2000 song, it's a beautiful day. It says you're not a hopeless case. Singing to me, not you.
No, I do that in my clearly not trying to be awesome at singing, but that song is actually awesome for us in hospitality, because it says you can you're not a hopeless case, and the beauty of that day is whether you choose to make it beautiful. Fantastic. So we encourage our team to realize that there's nobody coming here for other than peace. Like we only sell getaway. We sell a wedding getaway, a corporate retreat getaway, or leisure. So they all want to know they're at home. And that's what we try to deliver.
And you know what? I think people do, because I'll tell you a quick funny story. I know we got to wrap up, but I'm getting out of my car, trying to bring bags and a suit jacket and all kinds of stuff into Renault on that Sunday, and it's pouring rain. And I look up and Mark Schweiger goes, John, he pops a champagne bottle and tried to hit me with the cork. So it's always a celebration there. It's always good times. And I brought a bottle of champagne. So we had a Renault champagne and another champagne with the Schweigers, and they're awesome people. But Josh, this has been such a fun interview. Really, we dove deep into your life, and thank you for being transparent and vulnerable. Because what you shared is there were some tough, heavy things in this interview, but really appreciate you. So how are people going to follow up and find you and invest with you?
There'll be another show, if you don't mind, where we talk about the way we do it. That's a little different than all the other groups where people invest through the model called syndication. Ours is very different, but we'll do that at a different time. The best is always Scott Bendis, one of our investors, became a partner. And he is available, and I am available for calls. And the best way to reach us is accountableequity.com or Facebook or social media. But I would just hit the website up, and there's always contact, and it doesn't take us long. But Melanie and I both do this together, and we meet up for a learning growth. So since you gave me the platform, I should do this in the intro too. All December 2nd is a Saturday coming up during the Ice Festival. We have the Vintner Wonderland. Okay. At Renault, the next Learn and Grow. hopefully everybody listening right now is booking their ticket to come to that event on site. If you're an investor, it doesn't cost you anything for the food and beverage. And if you're not an investor, just come and register. So Learn and Grow event where we actually go behind the scenes. You see everything is December 2nd.
Yeah. And register soon because these events sell out
all the time. And the rooms sell out faster than that.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Josh, thanks so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Damn straight. We just got
buddy.
We got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.